Thin lines and tiny shapes are among the most common faults in logo design, and many companies that have such logos are getting them fixed. Let's talk about it. Thin shapes don't reproduce well. Fine lines and thin shapes have a tendency to fill in when printed in reverse. This happens in almost every kind of printing: offset, letterpress, silkscreen, laser, and even inkjet. The problem happens on coated stock, but will be even worse on uncoated paper. Even positive lines that are thin present difficulties in certain kinds of printing. And sooner or later, a client will need or want to reverse their identity. Online imagery is viewed through a grid of pixels. If the shapes are too thin, they will not occupy a whole pixel and will be reproduced in a color that is somewhere between the image color and the background color. Too many of these small shapes result in what I call pixel mush. There's no getting away from it. Fine lines and thin shapes will cause problems and should be avoided in identity design. Number 1, Bank of America opened up the spaces in their logo. That was good. Unfortunately, they also switched their signature to all caps and allowed too much letter spacing, resulting in looking smaller and less legible compared to the previous signature. One step forward, another step backward. Number 2, Dominion Energy replaced their too fine light rays emanating from a fingertip with a solid D monogram, with spaces thick enough to not fill in. Number 3, General Electric has had virtually the same identity since 1909, but in 2004 they thickened their lines a bit to prevent the difficulties we've been talking about. Number 4, Northeast Utilities changed their name to Eversource. They could have fixed their logo with fewer wedges and more space between them, but Eversource opted for a word mark with a multicolored logo, not good. In the middle of their word mark, also not good. We can expect they will change it again in a few years to fix these mistakes. Number 5, State Farm stubbornly kept the words in the middle of their three ovals long after they were no longer legible. Finally, they omitted the containment square and maintained their three ovals without the words. Number 6, Gap had problems with their thick and thin font in the square because it kept filling in. They replaced it with a heavyweight font with an overlapped gradient square. After only 6 years, they went back to their previous font, but in positive. It will still give them problems. Number 7, the Historic Houses Association has replaced their logo with a sturdier logo that communicates historic and houses much better. They also replaced their serif font with a sans serif font. Number 8, many serifs will fill in reverse. Yum made a solid change by replacing their thick, thin serif font with a slab serif. Number 9, going heavier in the font is not always the answer. Intuit had a word mark with a solid, heavy font, but the spaces between the letters was so tight that they tended to fill in. They could have opened up their word mark, but they opted for a new design with a medium weight font. Number 10, Papa John's had a similar problem with their heavy slab serif font. The spaces between their letters were too tight. They changed it to a similar weight sans serif that is a bit more readable. Number 11, the negative spaces in the Rogers logo were too tight. They lightened the elements and opened the spaces a bit. We will see if they open the spaces enough. Number 12, Kijiji is an online classified seller. When you have a company name that is difficult to read, it is best to have as simple a font as possible. Kijiji kept their playful feeling while making their word mark much cleaner without those long, thin serifs. Because branding designs will be used at all different sizes, in positive and reverse, and reproduced in every conceivable printing and reproduction method, including online and pixels, people are beginning to learn that thin lines and tiny elements just don't work. It's good to see these changes. Those companies would have been better served if the problematic logos had not been designed that way to begin with. By learning and conforming to the core principles, designers can avoid this and all other deadly sins of logo design. For more information, go to logodesigntheory.com. If you found this helpful, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and share this with anyone who needs to know more about logo design.